Hello everyone, today I'm going to try something a little bit different and something that I'm going to do in all of my videos up and coming. I'm going to do a voiceover because I think it's a little bit easier to explain everything that I'm doing, as well as I'm able to break down the video and make them a little bit shorter. So today we're going to be creating the card that you just saw there, and how we're going to begin is with a card base. It's actually a piece of paper that I trimmed down to 10 inches wide by 7 inches tall. And we're going to take the Martha Stewart scoreboard, and I'm going to actually score that at the 5-inch mark. And the Martha Stewart scoreboard is actually my favorite scoreboard. It's very easy to use. Everything is labeled very easily, and it comes with a little bone folder, as you can see there, that you're able to go ahead and score with. Then you can just fold it back on itself, and you can line everything up in that corner to make sure everything's straight. And then you can go ahead and fold down on that. Now you'll see that I'm going to repeat this process because I am going to make 2 cards today. Only 1 card in the video, but I am going to make 2 cards, so the second one is obviously made outside of this video. So once we have everything, and you can see here I'm taking another bone folder because I like to use a little bit of a larger bone folder to actually crease that down. So now what we're going to do is we are going to take a piece of 140-pound Canson watercolor paper. It's my favorite, right next to the Tim Holtz. The Tim Holtz is already cut down, so that's the only reason I didn't use it on this project, because I needed something a little bit larger for my 5x7 card. And we're going to use the Diamonds stamp set from Brutus Monroe. So as you can see here, all I'm doing is just taking that stamp, one of the diamond stamps, and I'm going to use Memento, Tuxedo black ink. I'm going to stamp down on that, and we're just going to randomly stamp all over our card base here. Now I do think that I forgot to mention that the card base that I cut here is actually 4.5 inches by 6.5 inches, and that's going to fit with a 1/2 inch border, of course, all the way around our card. Now with this stamp set, it's going to come with 3 different diamonds, so I am just randomly kind of stamping those diamonds all over our card base here. Or not card base, our, I guess, the card layer. And once we stamp all of that down here, you are going to go ahead and pick the another one of the diamonds, whichever one that you want to use next. There is a circle, there is a heart, and there is just the regular diamond shape, and we're going to stamp that all around. Now what you'll notice behind the project is there's actually a blue kind of foam sheet there. This is actually distributed by Doris. It is my favorite stamp kind of helper, I guess you would call it, and it's very, very squishy. So what that allows is you can actually squish down with the stamp, and it gives a little bit of resistance, thus in turn allowing you to get a really good stamp on this. And I use this because I'm using the watercolor cardstock, which has a little bit of a texture to it to make sure I get a good impression. And we're going to stamp again all around this card base here. And again, I keep calling it a card base, but it is just the layer for on top of the card. So for the sake of this video, when I say card base in reference to this, it's obviously just the top layer for our black card base. So we're going to go ahead and stamp our last impression here, leaving a little bit of room down in the lower right hand corner for our sentiment. And you don't have to leave that space there if you don't like to, but it's nice to leave it there because I don't like to cover up the artwork that I've just created. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put some, it is the Detail Embossing Powder from Recollections. It's actually clear. And what I like about this is I can put that on top of the Memento Tuxedo Black ink, and it will then make the Tuxedo Black ink permanent. The Memento Tuxedo Black ink is a fade-resistant dye ink, but it is water-based. So if you do want to use it to watercolor, you do want to go ahead and set it with the embossing powder so that you don't have kind of the streaks of the dark black ink running through. So we're just going to go ahead and, of course, heat emboss that. We're going to use our heat gun, and we're going to emboss it. And while I'm just going to go ahead and fan that a little bit so that we can make sure that it's cooled and dried. And now we're going to prep our distress inks. There is a huge variety of distress inks out there from Tim Holtz. I, of course, have been a little bit nuts about collecting all of them the past 2 weeks, and I finally have all of them that have been released so far. So, I'm just looking through them right now, and I'm going to go ahead and pick out the three of the purples. One is Shaded Lilac, one is Dusty Concord, and another is Seedless Preserves. Now, with these, and the technique that I'm using, all we're going to need to do is just smush the ink down on a clear acrylic block. You'll see in one moment that I'm going to pull that acrylic block out. I'm going to smush down the color, and then I'm going to spritz it with our water spritzer, our mini spritzing tool. I'm going to slide a piece of white cardstock under that block in one moment because I can't see how much ink that I've placed. So now, what we'll do is we're going to spritz it with that little spritzer, and all you're going to do literally for this process is take that spritzed ink with a paintbrush, and you are going to go ahead and just paint very haphazardly over top of the diamonds. It's going to create a very, very cool watercolor technique, and I think it's a lot of fun. So what we'll do is I'm going to play some music here in a moment, and I'm going to zoom in so that you can just watch me haphazardly paint these diamonds. And I thought it was important to keep the painting in so you can really see that it's just kind of blotting all around the diamonds. There's no really wrong or right way to do it. Just get your colors out, blot around with your water after spritzing on the diamonds, and you'll see it will create a really cool technique. Be back in a moment. Okay, and we're back, and what we're doing here is we're just going to go ahead and attempt to dry out a little bit of that distress ink. You don't really have to dry it out, it will dry on its own, but I'm a little bit impatient. So next what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take my brand new Cricut trimmer, paper trimmer, and I'm going to use that to cut down a piece of, I believe it's by Color Block, yes, Color Block cardstock, and it actually is a watercolor cardstock. So I'm going to go ahead and I am going to cut that down, and with the cutting that down, I'm pretty sure I did it to a 5x7. It may have been, I believe it was 4 maybe and an eighth. There's just a tiny little border that is around it. So you can create that tiny border however you would like. If it's a little bit of a bigger border, or it's completely up to you how you would go ahead and create that border. I just made a little one to go around so you'd see a little bit of the black that is the card base. Now what you'll see that I'm doing here is I'm taking the sentiment from the set, and I'm going to go ahead and stamp that on the exact same 140-pound watercolor cardstock. The reason I'm doing that is because I really like the weight of the cardstock, and I think that it would look great on the card having kind of the same look of what the cardstock looks like with the watercolor paper, as opposed to taking just a piece of white. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to emboss that same sentiment. You don't have to do this, I just thought that it was a great extra step to match what the diamonds look like with the embossing. Now we're just going to take whatever adhesive that you use. This is the wide ATG gun, and I'm going to go ahead and glue that down to the front of the card, and that is what is going to be underneath of our actual diamond overlay, I guess you would call it, or our actual diamond piece. So once that is on there and that's centered, we're going to go ahead and we are going to take our then diamond overlay, or our diamond, I guess, stamping, I guess we'll call it, that we've created, and I am going to then glue that with the ATG as well. I use the ATG and I use a lot of it because I think that that really holds down the card well. A lot of individuals will use a wet glue to adhere down their watercolor cardstock or watercolor paper. I personally like the ATG simply because I think that it works a lot better, and if you use a bit of it on the back, you won't run into a problem of anything with the glue or the ATG tape kind of coming up, and it will keep everything firmly down for you. So go ahead and we will adhere that onto the front. We're just going to center it here, and then the next step is going to be cutting out, I believe, our sentiment. And yes, now I'm using this Fiskars smaller cutting board for this, simply because down the center of this I have a little wire. There's a little wire that's in it that allows you to see exactly where you're cutting. This is important for me with sentiments simply because with this sentiment I want to know that I'm cutting exactly in the area that I want to cut. And you'll see here, you can't really see the wire up close, but with the wire it shows me exactly where I am cutting around the sentiment. Now I'm going to adhere the sentiment onto my purple, and I'm going to use that same kind of looking through the wire to cut out around it, and that's my favorite way to do it. A lot of, again, individuals will go ahead and cut out two separate pieces and then line them up. I prefer to put it down, cut it out around it, and that makes it very simple to know exactly how the sentiment is going to work here. So there's our finished card. The last step that I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to adhere a piece of white cardstock inside so that we are able to go ahead and write a message to whomever we are sending this card to. I hope you enjoyed this new style of video, and I hope you enjoyed the ability to kind of just listen and it not being a longer video, and you have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.